The Galactic Council research ship Meridian moved slowly through the dark space where Earth's solar system used to be. Commander Zephyra stood on the bridge, her blue-scaled hands pressed against the viewing window. The red giant star that had once been the sun. It was dying, slowly burning out after billions of years. His crystal body sparkled nervously in the dim light. All these dead worlds floating around a dying star. It makes me uncomfortable. Captain Thorns floated near them, his gas form contained in a mechanical suit. The humans lived here for thousands of years, he said through his voice box. Look, what happened to them? They all died when their stars started to change. Maybe we should learn from their mistakes. Zephyra turned away from the window. That is exactly why we are here, Captain. We need to understand what happened to the humans. They were the only species we know of that disappeared completely. No colonies, no survivors, no messages. They just vanished. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. The Meridian had been traveling for 3 months to reach this dead system. The Galactic Council wanted answers about the humans. They had found ruins on dozens of planets, broken cities, and old machines, but no living humans anywhere in the galaxy, Commander, called out Lieutenant Vex from her station. I am picking up something strange. There is an energy reading coming from the asteroid field near where the third planet used to be. Zephyra walked over to look at the screens. What kind of energy? It is very weak, but it looks like power cells. Old ones, but still working. Vex's tentacles moved quickly over her controls. Wait, there is something else. I think it might be life support systems. Dr. Crix moved closer, his crystal form clicking against the floor. Life support? After 800 years? That is impossible. Take us closer, Zephyra ordered. But be careful, we do not know what we might find. The Meridian changed course. Toward the asteroid field. As they got closer, their sensors found more signals. Hidden inside a large asteroid was a structure made of metal and concrete. It was old but still intact. There pointed Captain Thorns. Do you see those docking ports? This was built by humans. The design matches their old space stations. Zephyra felt her hearts beating faster. Dr. Crix, prepare an away team. We are going inside. An hour later, Zephyra led a small team through the airlock into the human facility. The air was stale but breathable. Emergency lights flickered on as they entered, triggered by their movement. The walls were covered with human writing, numbers, and letters that their computers could translate. Project Continuity, read Dr. Crix from a sign on the wall. Emergency Preservation Protocol, authorized personnel only. They walked through long corridors, lined with doors. Each door had a small window, and through them they could see empty rooms filled with dust. But deeper in the facility, they found something different. Commander, you need to see this, called Vex from ahead. Zephyra hurried forward and stopped. In front of them was a massive chamber filled with white pods. Hundreds of them, arranged in perfect rows. Each pod was connected to pipes and cables. Most of the pods were dark and silent. Cryogenic storage, whispered Dr. Crix. They tried to preserve themselves. Zephyra walked between the rows of pods. Through the clear windows on top, she could see the shapes of humans inside. They looked peaceful, like they were sleeping. But her scanner showed no life signs from any of them. All dead, she said sadly. Power must have failed decades ago. Wait, called Lieutenant Vex from the far end of the chamber. I am getting a reading over here. This one is different. They rushed over to where Vex was standing. One pod. In the back corner was still glowing with soft blue light. The displays on its side showed numbers that were still changing. Inside the pod was a human male, young-looking with brown hair and a beard. His chest was moving up and down very slowly. He is alive, breathed Dr. Crix. After all this time, one of them is still alive. Zephyra stared at the sleeping human. This changes everything. We have found the last human in the galaxy. Captain Thorns floated closer to examine the pod. Look at these readings. His vital signs are stable. The pod has been maintaining him perfectly for 8 centuries. We have to wake him up, said Zephyra. Think of what we could learn. A living human who remembers their civilization. Is that wise? Asked Captain Thorns. We know nothing about humans except that they were violent and aggressive. Their history is full of wars and conflicts. Maybe there is a reason they are extinct. Dr. Crix was already studying the pod's controls. The revival process looks automatic, but it will take time. It's maybe 3 days to safely bring him out of cryosleep. Zephora made her decision. Do it. Contact the council and tell them what we have found. They will want to send their best xenobiologists, Commander said Captain Thorns carefully. Are you sure about this? We are talking about reviving a member of a dead species known for violence. What if he is dangerous? He is one human, Captain. We are a crew of 40 from 6 different species. What harm could one primitive human do to us? Over the next 3 days, the Meridian became very busy. Ships arrived from across the galaxy, carrying scientists and diplomats. Everyone wanted to see the last human. The pod was moved to the medical bay where Dr. Crix and a team of experts monitored the revival process. On the morning of the 3rd day, the pod began to open. Yes. Steam hissed out as the temperature rose. The human inside began to move, his breathing getting faster. Zephora stood with her team around the pod, watching as the human's eyes slowly opened. He blinked several times, looking confused. When he saw the aliens around him, his eyes went wide. But he did not panic. The human sat up slowly, looking at each alien in turn. He was bigger than they had expected, with broad shoulders and thick arms. His movements seemed powerful, even though he had just woken up. "Where am I?" he asked. The universal translator changed his words so everyone could understand. "You are safe," said Zephora gently. "You have been asleep for a very long time. We are friends." The human looked around the medical bay, taking in all the alien technology. "How long?" "Jake," he said. "Jake Morrison. I was an engineer on the Luna colony. You went into cryosleep when the sun started to change. The plan was to wake up in a few hundred years when things got better." He paused. "How long has it been?" Zephora felt uncomfortable giving him the news. "Jake Morrison, my name is Commander Zephora. It has been 800 years since you went to sleep." Jake stared at her for a long moment. 800 years? What about the others? The other colonies? Where is everyone? The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, Dr. Crix spoke. "Jake Morrison, we are sorry to tell you this. Humanity is extinct. You are the last human in the galaxy." Jake closed his eyes and was quiet for a long time. When he opened them again, there was something different in his expression, something that made the alien step back slightly. "What year is it?" Jake asked quietly. "By your calendar, it is the year 2847, answered Zephora. Jake nodded slowly. "And you are all aliens? Different species working together?" "Yes, we are the Galactic Council. We have been studying human ruins for many years. We wanted to understand what happened to your people." Jake looked at each of them again, but this time his eyes seemed to be measuring them, judging them. "I see," he said. "Well, I guess I have a lot to learn about how things work now." None of the aliens realized it yet, but they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Jake Morrison sat on the edge of the medical bed, staring at his hands. 3 days had passed since he woke up to find himself surrounded by aliens. 3 days of learning that everything he knew was gone. His home, his family, his entire species. All dead for hundreds of years. Dr. Crix approached him carefully, holding a small device. "Jake, we need to run some more tests. Is that acceptable to you?" "Sure," Jake said quietly. He had been very cooperative so far, which surprised the aliens. They had expected anger or fear, but Jake seemed to handle the situation with unusual calm. "Your psychological profile is fascinating," Dr. Crix said as he scanned Jake with his device. "Most species would be in shock after learning what you have learned, but you seem to be adapting quickly." Jake shrugged. "We were trained for this." "Not exactly this, but close enough. Before going into cryosleep, we went through months of preparation. They taught us to expect that things would be very different when we woke up. But did they prepare you for being the last of your kind?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "No, they didn't prepare us for that." Commander Zephora entered the medical bay with a young alien Jake had not seen before. This one looked almost human, but with pale blue skin and silver hair. "Jake, I would like you to meet Dr. Luna Santos. She is our expert on human culture and history." Luna stepped forward and gave a small bow. "Hello, Jake. I am honored to meet you. I have spent many years studying your people." Jake looked at her with interest. "You look almost human." "My ancestors were from Mars," Luna explained. "They were human colonists who changed over many generations to live in the Martian environment. I am what you might call a distant cousin." For the first time since waking up, Jake smiled. "So, some humans did make it off Earth? A few colonies survived for a while," Luna said sadly. "But they all died out eventually. The Martian colony lasted. The longest, about 200 years after Earth was abandoned. I am descended from the last survivors." Jake nodded. At least something of humanity survived, even if it changed. Dr. Crix finished his scans and looked at the results. "Your muscle density is remarkable. It's much higher than any current galactic species, and your bone structure is incredibly strong. Humans evolved on a heavy gravity world," Jake explained. "Earth's gravity is about twice what most civilized worlds have now." "It explains your physical capabilities," said Commander Zephyra. "We noticed you move very quickly and precisely. Yesterday, when Dr. Crix dropped that instrument, you caught it before any of us could even react." Jake looked confused. "That was just a normal reflex. Anyone would have done that." The aliens exchanged glances. "Actually, no," said Luna. "Current galactic species do not have reflexes like that." "Interesting," Jake said. "What else is different about how you live now?" Luna sat down across from him. "Would you like me to explain how galactic society works, please?" "Well, the major change is that we have eliminated warfare completely. All conflicts are resolved through discussion and negotiation. The Galactic Council has representatives from every species, and we make decisions together." Jake raised an eyebrow. "No wars at all? What about when negotiation fails?" "Does not fail," said Commander Zephyra. "We have economic sanctions, trade restrictions, and social pressure. These methods always work eventually." "What about crime? Criminals who refuse to negotiate?" "Most choose to change their behavior after proper counseling." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds very peaceful." "It is," said Luna proudly. "We have created a truly civilized galaxy. No violence, no aggression, no war. It is everything your species was working toward." "What happened to Earth?" Jake asked. "I mean, I know the sun changed, but what happened to the people, Commander?" "According to our records, humans began abandoning Earth about 50 years before you went into cryosleep. We assumed they had developed faster-than-light travel and moved to other star systems. But they didn't," Jake said. "It wasn't a question. We have searched the galaxy for centuries. There are no human colonies anywhere. Your species seems to have just given up." Jake stared at the hologram of his dead solar system.
We never
"Figured out faster-than-light travel. The best we could do was generation ships that would take thousands of years to reach other stars. Most people didn't want to leave Earth, so they stayed and died," said Dr. Crix softly. "Some tried to adapt. Some went underground. Some went to the outer planets. But when the sun started changing, there wasn't enough time." Jake's voice was flat, emotionless. "And some of us went to sleep, hoping someone would wake us up when things got better." Luna reached across and touched his hand gently. "I am sorry. I know this must be very hard." Jake looked at her hand on his. Her skin was warm, almost human. "What do you want from me?" "Want from you?" asked Commander Zephyra. "You didn't wake me up out of kindness. You want something. Information about humans. Scientific knowledge." "What?" The aliens looked uncomfortable. Finally, Dr. Crix spoke. "We want to understand why humanity failed. You were an advanced species with great technology. Should have been able to solve the problem of your dying star. Instead, you went extinct. We want to learn from your mistakes," added Commander Zephyra, "so other species do not make the same errors." Jake nodded slowly. "I see. So I'm a specimen, last. Example of a failed species. Not a specimen," said Luna quickly. A teacher. Someone who can help us understand. What do you want to know? Luna pulled out a datapad. Everything. Your history, your culture, your technology. But mostly we want to understand human nature. What made humans different from other species? Jake thought about that question. We were stubborn. When things got hard, we got harder. When someone said something was impossible, we tried to prove them wrong. We never gave up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do. That sounds like a good quality, said Dr. Crix. Why did it not help you survive? Maybe it did. Maybe that's why I'm here talking to you instead of dying with everyone else. Commander Zephora leaned forward. Jake, would you be willing to help us? We can give you a place on our ship, a purpose. You could help us study human ruins and artifacts. Your knowledge would be invaluable. Jake looked around the medical bay, then at each of the aliens. Do I have a choice? Of course, said Luna. You are not a prisoner. If you want, we can find you a place to live on one of our worlds. You could have a peaceful life. A peaceful life, Jake repeated. What would I do? Whatever you want. Study, create art, explore the galaxy. The council would make sure you have everything you need. Jake was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I'll help you study human history. But I want to learn. I want to understand how you built this peaceful galaxy. Excellent, said Commander Zephora. Dr. Santos will be your guide and cultural liaison. She can answer any questions you have about how we live now. I have a lot of questions, Jake said. Luna smiled. I have a lot of answers. Over the next few days, Jake began to learn about galactic civilization. Luna showed him how different species worked together, how conflicts were resolved, how decisions were made. She explained their justice system, their economic system, their social structures. Jake listened carefully to everything, asking detailed questions about how things worked. Some of his questions seemed strange to the aliens. He wanted to know about their military capabilities, their emergency procedures, their backup plans for when their peaceful methods failed. We do not have backup plans, Luna explained. Our methods do not fail. Everything fails eventually, Jake said. What happens when you meet a species that doesn't want to negotiate? All intelligent species want to negotiate, said Dr. Crix. It is the logical way to resolve conflicts. Jake didn't argue, but Luna noticed he looked unconvinced. On the 5th day, Jake asked to see the ship's security systems. Commander Zephora showed him around, explaining their non-lethal restraint. Devices and their emergency protocols? These are your weapons? Jake asked, looking at a device that fired nets. We do not have weapons, said Commander Zephora. We have tools for maintaining order. Jake picked up the net launcher and examined it. His movements were quick and sure, like he understood how it worked, just by touching it. Jake said Luna carefully, You seem very interested in our security systems. Jake set down the device. I'm interested in everything. That's how humans learn. We take things apart to see how they work. But Luna noticed something in his eyes when he looked at their tools for maintaining order. Something that made her feel so nervous. 2 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison woke up from his 800-year sleep. He had learned to move around the ship without bumping into the smaller aliens. He had learned their names and tried to understand their different cultures. But the more he learned about galactic civilization, the more worried he became. The morning trouble started with a simple announcement from Commander Zephora. We have received a priority message from the Galactic Council. There is a dispute between the Rigel Mining Consortium and the Vega Trade Alliance over mineral rights in the neutral zone. Jake was in the mess hall eating breakfast with Luna Santos when the announcement came. What kind of dispute, he asked. Standard resource conflict, Luna explained. Both groups claim the same asteroid field. It happens sometimes. How will it be resolved? Dr. Crix, who was sitting nearby, answered, The council will form a committee to study the issue. Then there will be hearings where both sides present their cases. After that, we will negotiate a fair solution. How long does that take? Jake asked. Usually about 6 months, said Commander Zephora, who had joined them. Sometimes longer. If the issues are complex, Jake stopped eating. 6 months? What happens to the asteroid field during those 6 months? Nothing, said Luna. Both sides agree to stop all mining until the dispute is resolved, so nobody gets any minerals for 6 months while you have meetings. The aliens looked at each other. That is correct, said Dr. Crix. It ensures fairness. Jake shook his head. Where I come from, we would divide the asteroid field in half. Each side gets 49%, and 1% goes to whoever mediates the dispute. Problem solved in 1 day. Commander Zephyra looked shocked. That is far too simple. What if one half has more valuable minerals than the other? Rotate. 1 year, the Rigel group gets the better half. Next year, the Vega group gets it. But what if they disagree about which half is better? Jake shrugged. Then they flip a coin. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Captain Thorns, who had been listening, finally spoke. Jake Morrison, your solution is very primitive. It does not consider the complex economic and social factors involved. My solution gets minerals flowing again in 1 day instead of 6 months, Jake replied. How many people need those minerals for their jobs? How many will suffer while you spend half a year talking? Luna touched his arm gently. Jake, our way ensures that everyone is happy with the result. Are they happy? Do they just give up? Arguing because they're tired of waiting? That afternoon, Jake watched a council session on the ship's communication system. The Rigel-Vega dispute was being discussed by representatives from 12 different species. They talked for 3 hours without making any decisions. This is your government? Jake asked Luna, who was watching with him. Yes. The council makes all major decisions for the galaxy. How do you get anything done? We take time to consider all options. We make sure everyone has a voice. Jake watched as the session ended with plans for another meeting the following week. Luna, can I ask you something personal? Of course. How old are you? I am 43 standard years old. Have you ever seen the council actually solve a problem quickly? Luna thought about it. Well, there was the food shortage on Centauri Prime. They resolved that in only 2 months. 2 months to decide to send food to hungry people? They had to make sure the food was culturally appropriate for 17 different species living on that planet. Jake rubbed his forehead. How did the human colonies survive with decision-making like this? The human colonies were much smaller, Luna explained. They used more direct methods. You mean faster methods? I mean more violent methods, Luna said quietly. That evening, Jake had dinner with several crew members. The conversation turned to galactic history, and Jake asked about conflicts between species. There have not been any real conflicts for over 300 years, said Dr. Crix proudly. We have achieved true peace. What about crime? Jake asked. Individual, criminals, not species conflicts. We have rehabilitation centers, said Lieutenant Vex. Criminals are helped to understand why their actions harm society. What if they don't want to be rehabilitated? Everyone wants to be better, said Commander Zephyra. When criminals understand how their actions affect others, they choose to change. What if they don't? The aliens looked confused. They always do, said Dr. Crix. Jake tried a different approach. What's the worst crime anyone has committed in the last 100 years? The crew thought about it. Finally, Captain Thorns answered. There was a Denebian trader who sold fake medical supplies. He caused several people to become ill. What happened? To him, he spent 2 years in counseling. Now, he works for the Medical Ethics Board, making sure other traders do not make the same mistake. Jake stared at them. That's it? It's your worst criminal? It was a very serious crime, said Luna. Defensively, people could have died. On Earth, we would have called that a minor fraud case. What do you do about real criminals? Murderers, kidnappers, people who hurt others for fun? The silence stretched on. Finally, Dr. Crix spoke. Jake, those kinds of people do not exist. Anymore? Civilization has evolved beyond such primitive behaviors? You mean nobody in the galaxy commits violent crimes? Correct, said Commander Zephyra. Violence is not logical. Intelligent beings do not harm each other without reason. Jake looked around the table at all the alien faces. What if someone had a reason? What if they thought violence would get them what they wanted? They would be wrong, said Captain Thorns firmly. Violence never solves anything. It solved a lot of things for humans, Jake said quietly. The conversation died after that. Jake excused himself and went to his quarters, where he lay on his bed thinking about what he had learned. The next day, Luna found him in the observation deck staring out at the stars. You seem troubled, she said, sitting beside him. Luna, can I tell you something about human history? I would like that. Jake was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. Humans fought wars for thousands of years. Big wars, small wars, wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas. It was terrible and wasteful and stupid. That is what our records show, Luna agreed. But those wars also drove us to develop technology faster than any other species in galactic history. We went from riding horses to flying to other planets in less than a century. We created medicine that could cure diseases that killed millions. We built cities that could survive earthquakes and hurricanes. How did war help with those things? Because when someone is trying to kill you, you find ways to survive. When your enemy has better weapons, you build better weapons. When your people are dying of disease, you find cures fast or you lose the war. Luna looked uncomfortable. Surely. There were better ways to achieve progress. Maybe. But humans never had the luxury of taking 6 months to make decisions. If we waited too long, we died. And that is why your species went extinct, Luna said sadly. All that aggression and violence led nowhere good. Jake turned to look at her. Luna, what happens if your peaceful methods stop working? You mean, what if you encounter a species that doesn't want to negotiate? A species that takes what it wants by force? It cannot happen. All intelligent species understand that cooperation is better than conflict. But what if you're wrong? What if there's a species out there that thinks like humans used to think? Luna was quiet for a long moment, and I suppose we would have. To find a way to convince them that they are wrong. And if you can't convince them, Jake, you are worrying about something that will never happen. The galaxy has evolved beyond such primitive thinking. Jake nodded and turned back to the stars. But Luna noticed that his hands were clenched into fists, and she remembered something from her studies of human history. Humans always clenched their fists when they were preparing to fight. Later that day, Jake asked Commander Zephora if he could access the ship's database to study galactic military history. Military history? She asked, confused. There is no military history. We do not have militaries. What about your ships? I have defensive systems, basic shields and evasion capabilities. Nothing more. What about weapons? Do not have weapons, Jake. We have tools for maintaining order, as I showed you before. Jake was quiet for a moment. Commander, what would you do if another ship attacked you right now? We would contact the Council and request diplomatic intervention. What if the attacking ship didn't want to talk? All ships want to talk, Jake. It is standard procedure. But what if they didn't? What if they just kept shooting? Commander Zephora looked troubled. Jake, why are you asking these questions? 'Cause where I come from, there were people who shot first and never talked at. All that night, Jake lay in his bed thinking about the galaxy he had woken up in. It was peaceful and civilized and everything humans had dreamed of achieving. But it was also soft and unprepared and completely helpless against anyone who didn't share their values. Jake had spent his whole life preparing for emergencies that might never happen. These aliens had spent centuries assuming that emergencies would never happen at all. He hoped they were right, but deep in his gut, he had a feeling. They were about to find out how wrong they could be. 3 weeks after Jake Morrison had been asking uncomfortable questions about galactic security, the emergency alarm on the Meridian started screaming. Jake was in the ship's library with Luna Santos when the lights turned red and the crew rushed to their stations. What's happening? Jake asked as they hurried to the bridge. I don't know, Luna replied, looking worried. We haven't had an emergency alarm in over 2 years. On the bridge, Commander Zephora was studying multiple screens, filled with data. Her blue scales had turned darker, which Jake had learned meant she was stressed. Report, she ordered as her crew gathered around. Lieutenant Vex spoke quickly. Commander, we are receiving priority alerts from the Outer Rim. 3 research stations have gone silent.
Ow.
No communications, no emergency signals, nothing. Equipment. Unlikely. Vex manipulated her controls, bringing up a star map. Look at this pattern. Stations that went silent are all in a line, moving toward inhabited systems. Captain Thorns floated closer to examine the display. What could cause 3 stations to lose communication simultaneously? Maybe solar flares, suggested Dr. Crix, or some kind of electromagnetic storm. Jake moved to get a better look at the star map. The pattern was obvious to him, but the aliens seemed to be missing it. Far apart are these stations? About 50 light years between each one, answered Vex. And they went silent in order? First this one, then this one, then this one? Yes, over the past 6 standard days. Jake studied the map more carefully. What's the next inhabited system in that direction? Vex checked her data. Oh, Geneva. It has about 12 million residents from 4 different species. Contact New Geneva immediately, Jake said urgently. Commander Zephora turned to him. Jake, why are you giving orders? Because this isn't equipment failure or solar flares. Something is moving through space in a straight line, taking out your research stations one by one. It's heading for a system with 12 million people.
Ow.
Bridge fell silent. Captain Thorns was the first to speak. I'm telling you, it's happening. Dr. Crix looked confused. But who would do such a thing? There are no hostile species in this galaxy. There are now? Jake said grimly. Lieutenant Vex suddenly spoke up from her station. Commander, I'm getting a message from the Galactic Council. Emergency session called. All ships are ordered to return to Council space immediately. Put the message through, ordered Zephora. The main screen filled with the image of Chancellor Mordock, the senior representative of the Galactic Council. His usually calm expression was replaced by obvious worry. Attention, all Council vessels. We have confirmed that 3 research stations in Sector 7 have been destroyed. This appears to be the work of an unknown species from outside our galaxy. All ships are to return to defended space while we assess the situation. The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Destroyed? Whispered Luna. The Chancellor said destroyed, not damaged. Jake felt his blood run cold. How many people were on those stations? Gone. Commander Zephora straightened up, trying to regain control of the situation. Set course for Council headquarters. Maximum speed. What he saw made his stomach clench with a feeling he recognized from old human military history. Luna, come look at this, he called. She joined him at the console. What are you seeing? The timing between attacks? Station Alpha went silent 6 days ago. Station Beta went silent 4 days ago. Station Gamma went silent 2 days ago. So they're moving faster, Luna said. Oh, they're learning. The first attack took them longer because they didn't know what they were dealing with. Each attack after that was faster because they knew exactly what to do. Jake highlighted the data. Look at these energy readings from before each station. Went silent. The same pattern, but compressed into shorter time frames. Dr. Crix had been listening. Think these attackers are studying our technology? Think they're testing your defenses. Learning how you respond, how long it takes you to react, what kind of resistance you put up. Jake's voice was grim. This isn't random destruction. This is reconnaissance. Captain Thorns floated over to them. Reconnaissance for what? For whatever comes next. Over the next 2 days, as the Meridian traveled toward Council space, more bad news arrived. The unknown attackers had destroyed 2 more stations and were now only 3 days away from New Geneva. Jake spent most of his time in the communications center. Listening to Council emergency sessions, what he heard made him more worried with each passing hour. All conflicts can be resolved through negotiation. We should send a message in all known languages, suggested another. Perhaps there is simply a communication barrier. I propose we offer them full trading rights, said a third. Economic incentives have always worked before. Jake turned to Luna, who was sitting beside him. Are they seriously planning to negotiate with people who just killed thousands of your citizens? It is the logical first step, Luna replied. But she sounded uncertain. Luna, what if these attackers don't want to negotiate? What if they just want to take what they want by force? All intelligent species understand that cooperation benefits everyone. What if they're not like any species? You've met before? Before Luna could answer, Lieutenant Vex's voice came over the ship's communication system. All crew to the bridge immediately. Emergency transmission from New Geneva. They rushed to the bridge to find the crew gathered around the main screen. The image showed a human-looking alien with pale skin and dark hair. His clothes were torn, and there was blood on his face. "This is Governor Walsh of New Geneva Colony," he said, his voice shaking. "We are under attack by unknown ships. They appeared without warning and began destroying our orbital facilities. We tried to contact them, but they are not responding to any communication attempts." The image shook as explosions could be heard in the background. "They have landed ground. Forces, our security teams tried to establish contact, but the invaders opened fire immediately. We have casualties. Many casualties." The transmission cut to static. Commander Zephora stared at the blank screen. Ground forces. They landed troops. Jake closed his eyes. "It's an invasion." "That's impossible," said Dr. Crix. "Species don't invade each other anymore." "These species do." Captain Thorns turned to Jake. "You seem to understand these attackers. What do you think they want?" Jake opened his eyes and looked around the bridge. "Everything. Your worlds, your resources, your technology, and they're willing to kill anyone who gets in their way. Then we must stop them," said Commander Zephora. "How?" Jake asked. "What weapons do you have? What military forces? What battle plans?" The silence on the bridge was deafening. Finally, Dr. Crix spoke. "Hey, we have the Council Security Force. They maintain order and help with emergencies." "How many ships?" "About 50 scattered across the galaxy." "Crew?" "Each ship has a crew of about 30. Jake did the math in his head. 1,500 people. Probably with no military training and no real weapons. "They have non-lethal restraint devices," said Lieutenant Vex hopefully. "Against an enemy that's already killed thousands of your people?" Commander Zephra looked desperate. "Jake, you studied human military history. What would humans do in this situation?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very serious. "Humans would fight. We would use every weapon we had, every ship we could find, every person who could hold a gun. We would make the enemy pay for every meter of ground, every world they tried to take." "But we are not humans," said Captain Thorns. "We are civilized." "Then you're going to die," Jake said simply. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of the ship's engines. Luna finally spoke. "Jake, is there another way? Something that doesn't involve violence?" Jake looked at her, then at each of the aliens on the bridge. These people had created a peaceful galaxy, something humans had dreamed of 4 centuries, built a civilization based on cooperation and understanding, and now something was coming to destroy it all. "Maybe," Jake said slowly, "but first, you need to understand something about the enemy you're facing. They're not interested in peace. They're not interested in negotiation. They see your civilization as weak and your people as targets." "How can you know that?" asked Commander Zephora. "Because they act exactly like humans used to act. When we wanted to conquer something," Jake walked to the star map display and pointed to the line of destroyed stations. "They're testing your defenses, learning your capabilities, measuring your response time. Soon they'll move on to bigger targets, more colonies, more worlds, more people." He turned back to face the crew, "unless someone stops them." "Who?" asked Dr. Crix. "The Council's security force is too small. Our member species have no military experience." Jake looked at each of them again. "I might know a way, but you're not going to like it." "Tell us," said Commander Zephora. "You need to learn how to fight, not like civilized galactic citizens, like humans." The Galactic Council emergency session was the largest in history. Representatives from every member species filled the great chamber on Council Prime, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. Jake Morrison stood at the back of the observation deck watching the debate with growing frustration. "We must send more diplomatic messages," urged Representative Kala from Rigel 7. "Perhaps we misunderstood their intentions." "They destroyed New Geneva completely," replied Chancellor Mordock grimly. 12 million civilians are dead. Their intentions seem clear. Jake had seen the reports from New Geneva. The attackers, who called themselves the Harvesters, had strip-mined the entire planet in just 2 days. Nothing was left but bare rock. No survivors, no ruins, no trace that civilization had ever existed there. Commander Zephora stood up from her seat in the gallery. "Honored representatives, we have someone who may be able to help us understand this threat." Jake Morrison is the last human, recently revived from cryogenic sleep. He has studied warfare and military tactics. The chamber fell silent as thousands of alien eyes turned to look at Jake. He had never spoken to so many people at once. But he knew this might be his only chance to save them. "May I address the council?" Jake asked. Chancellor Mordock nodded. "The council recognizes Jake Morrison of Earth." Jake walked down to the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. When he reached the center, he looked up at all the representatives surrounding him. 3 days ago, you asked me why humanity went extinct," Jake began. "You wanted to learn from our mistakes. Well, here's the biggest mistake we made. We waited too long to work together." He activated the holographic display showing the pattern of harvester attacks. Now, these attackers are following a classic military strategy. They probe your defenses, identify your weaknesses, then strike at your most valuable targets. They destroyed your outer stations to test your response time. They invaded New Geneva to see how you would fight back. But we tried to negotiate," protested Representative Vorn from Centauri. "And they learned that you have no backup plan when negotiation fails," Jake replied. "They know you're not prepared to fight? That makes you easy targets." Dr. Crick stood up from the scientific section. "Jake Morrison, are you suggesting we abandon 800 years of peaceful evolution and return to barbarism?" "I'm suggesting you learn the difference between barbarism and survival." Jake changed the display to show human military history. "Humans fought wars for thousands of years. We hated it. War destroyed cities, killed millions, wasted resources. But it also taught us things your peaceful galaxy never learned, such as," asked Chancellor Mordock, "how to make hard decisions quickly, how to sacrifice a few to save many, how to fight when fighting is the only option left." The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. Jake waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Let me show you something," he said, bringing up technical data about Council security forces. "You have 50 security ships scattered across the galaxy. Each one has 30 crew members with non-lethal weapons. You're facing an enemy that can destroy a planet in 2 days." The math was obvious to everyone. "Your only advantage is that you outnumber them," Jake continued. "The Harvester fleet has maybe 200 ships. You have thousands of civilian vessels that could be converted to military use." "Convert civilian ships to military use?" It gasped. "Representative, this is from Vega. That would violate every principle of civilized society." "So would letting your entire civilization get destroyed?" Jake shot back. Luna Santos stood up from her seat near the human section. "Jake, surely there must be another way, some form of compromise." Jake looked at her sadly. "Luna, I've studied the attack patterns. The Harvesters aren't interested in compromise. They see other species as resources to be harvested, not equals to negotiate with." He changed the display again, showing projections of future attacks. Based on their current speed, they'll reach the core worlds in 6 months. Every major population center in the galaxy will be gone within a year. The silence in the chamber was complete now. Lest Jake continued, "You're willing to do something that goes against everything you believe in. You need to fight." "Chancellor." Mordock leaned forward. "Jake Morrison, assuming we accept your analysis, what do you propose?" Jake had been thinking about this for days. "First, evacuate the outer colonies immediately. Don't waste time trying to defend places you can't hold. Fall back to positions you can defend. Abandon our own people, asked Representative Kala, horrified. Save the people, abandon the places. Those are different things, Jake brought up. A tactical display. Second, convert your fastest civilian ships to carry weapons. Nothing fancy, just enough firepower to hurt the harvesters. We don't have weapons, pointed out Captain Thorns from the military section. You have mining lasers. Industrial cutters, cargo rams. Weapons are just tools used for a different purpose. Dr. Crix raised a tentacle. Jake Morrison, even if we build these weapons, who would use them? Our people have no military training. Then I'll train them. The chamber erupted again. This time the arguments were louder and more heated. A human training our security forces? Shouted Representative Vorn. The same species that destroyed itself through violence? The same species that survived longer in a hostile galaxy than any other? Jake replied firmly. You want to know why humans went extinct? We didn't. We're here, talking to you, trying to save your lives. Commander Zafira stood up again. The Council should consider Jake's proposal. We've tried peaceful solutions for 2 weeks while the harvesters destroyed 4 more colonies. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Chancellor Mordak. Jake took a deep breath. I propose we use human military knowledge to defend galactic civilization. I'll teach your security forces basic combat tactics. Your engineers can convert civilian ships to military vessels. Your scientists can develop better weapons. And after the threat is over? Asked Representative Thesis. What happens to all these weapons and military knowledge? It's up to you, Jake said. Humans eventually chose to put down their weapons and try to build a peaceful society. Maybe you can do better than we did. The debate continued for hours. Species representatives argued about ethics, philosophy, and the dangers of militarization. But every few minutes, another report would arrive about harvester attacks on outer colonies. Finally, Chancellor Mordak called for a vote. All those in favor of accepting Jake Morrison's proposal? Voting took nearly an hour. When it was finished, the result was close. 50.3% in favor, 49.7% opposed. The proposal passes by the narrowest margin in Council history, announced Chancellor Mordak. Jake Morrison, you have the authority to begin training our security forces. Jake nodded grimly. We need to start immediately. We need volunteers from every species. Over the next month, Jake worked 18 hours a day training alien security officers. The process was harder than he had expected. These people had no instinct for violence, no understanding of tactics, no experience with weapons more dangerous than restraint nets. But they learned. Jake taught them about formations, about cover and concealment, about concentrating firepower. He showed them how to think like soldiers instead of police officers. The hardest lesson was teaching them to accept casualties. Sometimes good people die so that more good people can live, he explained to a group of Centauri officers. That's not fair, but it's reality. Luna Santos joined the training program, despite her initial reservations. I want to understand, she told Jake. If this is humanity's legacy, I want to know what we're becoming. You're not becoming humans, Jake assured her. You're learning to defend the civilization you built. There's a difference. 3 months after the council vote, the first converted warships rolled out of civilian shipyards. They were crude compared to human military vessels, but they were armed and ready to fight. The real test came when a Harvester scout fleet approached the Altair system. Instead of evacuating immediately, the defenders followed Jake's plan. Let the scouts get close, then attacked from multiple directions at once. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. When it was over, all 12 Harvester ships were destroyed. The Galactic forces lost only 3 vessels. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. For the first time since the crisis began, people had hope. Jake stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching the debris field where the Harvester scouts had been destroyed. It worked, said Commander Zephora, who now wore the uniform of a military commander. This time, Jake replied. But they'll learn from this defeat, just like they learned from destroying your research stations. Next time will be harder. Then we'll be ready for next time too. Jake smiled for the first time in months. Maybe you will be. Maybe you'll learn to fight well enough that you'll never have to fight again. Is that what happened to humans? Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about his dead species and the civilization that had taken their place. Oh. No, he said quietly. But maybe you can do what we never could. Maybe you can learn to be strong enough to stay peaceful. 6 months later, the main harvester fleet arrived at the edge of Council space. They found a galaxy that was ready for them.